When people think about Hollywood's golden age, they imagine glamour, beauty, and success. They picture elegant movie premieres, shining gowns, charming leading men, and flashing cameras. The 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s are often described as the most magical era in film history. It was a time when studios like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Warner Brothers, and Paramount Pictures ruled the entertainment world. Stars were treated like royalty, and millions of fans around the world followed their lives with admiration. But behind the bright lights and smiling faces, there was another story, a much darker one. Hidden behind the glamour was a culture of pressure, control, and silence. Many actors and actresses were not living fairy tales. They were living under extreme stress. They worked long hours, often without rest. They were controlled by strict contracts. Studios managed their weight, their relationships, their public image, and even their personalities. In this world, alcohol became more than just a drink at a party. For many stars, it became a way to escape. It became comfort, relief, and eventually a trap. Drinking was not seen as shocking in that era. In fact, it was often encouraged. Parties were common. Studio executives drank. Directors drank. Writers drank. For actors, alcohol was easy to find and socially accepted. If someone was nervous before filming, a drink could calm them. If someone felt lonely in a big mansion, a drink could fill the silence. If someone was heartbroken, exhausted, or overwhelmed, alcohol offered quick comfort. At first, it felt harmless. But over time, that comfort became dependence. Dependence slowly became addiction. And addiction, especially in those days, was not treated as a medical problem. It was treated as a weakness. Studios did not want the public to know if a star had a problem. They covered it up. They protected their investment, not the person. If an actor showed up drunk but still performed well, it was ignored. If they began to struggle, they were warned quietly. And if they became too difficult to manage, they were replaced. The show had to go on. Many of these stars were incredibly talented. They were not careless people who simply partied too much. Some of them were sensitive artists who felt emotions deeply. Some were dealing with painful childhoods. Some faced public scandals. Some lived double lives because society would not accept who they truly were. Others were pushed into fame at a young age and never had the chance to grow up normally. The pressure to stay perfect was constant. Fans expected beauty and charm at all times. Studios demanded box office success. The media watched every mistake. In such an environment, alcohol became a quiet companion. It helped them sleep. It helped them forget. It helped them survive until it began destroying them. What makes these stories especially tragic is how common the pattern was. A star would rise quickly, shining brightly in hit films. They would become a household name. Then small signs of trouble would appear. Maybe they were late to set. Maybe they gained or lost weight. Maybe rumors started spreading. Then the drinking would grow worse. Their appearance would change. Their performances would suffer. Directors would lose patience. Studios would cancel contracts. Friends would slowly disappear. And finally, many of them died far too young, often alone. The public would be shocked for a few days. Newspapers would print dramatic headlines. And then Hollywood would move on to the next rising star. But behind each headline was a human being who once had dreams, talent, and hope. This article explores the lives of 15 Golden Age stars whose battles with alcohol shaped their destinies. Some were legends like Judy Garland and Richard Burton. Others, like Barbara Payton, experienced shocking falls from fame in only a few years. Their stories are different, but they share one painful truth. Behind the glamour of old Hollywood was a system that often ignored suffering until it was too late. These were not just stories about drinking. They were stories about pressure, loneliness, broken systems, and lost potential. And in one heartbreaking case, the addiction did not even begin as a personal choice. It was created by the very studio that claimed to protect its star. During the 1940s and 1950s, Gloria Graham was one of the most unforgettable faces in Hollywood. She had a unique kind of beauty that stood out from other actresses of her time. Her soft voice, slightly mysterious smile, and emotional depth made her perfect for film noir movies. She often played complicated women, characters who were charming but also wounded, strong but also vulnerable. Audiences were drawn to her because she felt real on screen. She won an Academy Award for her performance in The Bad and the Beautiful, and for a while, it seemed like her future in Hollywood was secure. Directors admired her talent, and fans admired her beauty. But her personal life was far more complicated than her screen roles. Behind the scenes, she struggled with emotional instability and difficult relationships. Her marriage to director Nicholas Ray ended in scandal when it was revealed that she had become involved with his teenage son. Years later, she would marry that same stepson when he was an adult, creating one of the most shocking stories in Hollywood gossip at the time. The scandal damaged her reputation deeply, and in an industry that cared about image above all else, reputation was everything as her career continued. Graham began drinking more heavily. At first, it may have seemed like social drinking, something common in Hollywood parties. But over time, it became clear that alcohol was no longer just a casual habit. It was becoming a crutch. Like many actors, she faced constant pressure to stay young and beautiful. Hollywood was especially harsh on women. As actresses aged, roles became fewer and more limited. Instead of being offered leading roles, they were pushed into smaller parts. Graham feared losing her beauty and, with it, her career. In an attempt to hold on to her youthful appearance, she turned to cosmetic procedures. Unfortunately, some of these procedures were poorly done and left her with permanent damage. Her upper lip became partially paralyzed, affecting her speech. The very face that had once made her famous now became a source of insecurity and struggle. Alcohol only made things worse. It clouded her judgment and made her physical condition harder to manage as the years passed. Her roles became smaller and less frequent. The glamorous premieres and major studio contracts slowly disappeared. She moved to England later in her career, trying to find new opportunities in theater and smaller productions. For a time, she managed to rebuild some stability, but her health was already suffering. Long-term alcohol use had damaged her liver and weakened her body. When she was diagnosed with cancer, her system was not strong enough to fight the disease effectively. In 1981, at the age of 57, Gloria Graham died. Doctors noted that liver damage from years of drinking had limited her treatment options. Her story is not just about scandal or beauty fading with time. It is about how pressure, insecurity, and emotional pain can slowly push someone toward destructive habits. She was not just a Hollywood stereotype. She was a talented woman trying to survive in a system that valued appearance over well-being. In the end, the same industry that once celebrated her unique presence moved on quietly, leaving behind another golden age star whose light faded far too soon. The story of alcohol in the golden age of Hollywood is not just about fame, glamour, and flashing cameras. It is also about pressure, loneliness, and silent battles that many stars fought behind closed doors. During the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, the studio system controlled almost every part of an actor's life. Big studios like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Warner Brothers signed actors to strict contracts. These contracts decided what films they would make, how they would dress, who they would date in public, and even what they could say in interviews. On the outside, these stars looked perfect. They smiled on red carpets, posed for magazines, and appeared larger than life on the big screen. But inside, many of them felt trapped. They worked long hours, sometimes shooting one film after another without real rest. If a movie failed, the blame often fell on the actor. If gossip columns printed rumors, the studio might punish them. In the stressful world, alcohol was easy to find and socially accepted. Parties were common, and drinking was seen as part of the Hollywood lifestyle. For some stars, a drink started as a way to relax after a hard day. Over time, for a few of them, that drink became something much more dangerous. It became a habit, then a need, and finally a force that slowly destroyed careers and lives. The public rarely saw this dark side. Fan magazines protected the image of their favorite actors. Studios hired publicists to hide scandals and send struggling stars to quiet rest homes instead of admitting they had drinking problems. In a time when mental health was not openly discussed, many actors had no real support. They were expected to be strong, charming, and grateful at all times. When they could not handle the pressure, they often suffered alone. This hidden world of pain and addiction shows that behind the golden lights of Hollywood, there were real human beings facing very real struggles. Their stories are not just about failure. They are about how fame, without support and understanding, can become a heavy burden that some people simply cannot carry. One of the most tragic examples of a golden age star destroyed by alcohol is John Barrymore. Born into a famous acting family, John was expected to succeed from a very young age. He had natural talent, a powerful voice, and a charming personality that made audiences fall in love with him. In the 1920s and 1930s, he became one of the biggest names in Hollywood. He starred in films like Grand Hotel and impressed audiences with his strong performances on both stage and screen. Many people believed he was one of the greatest actors of his time. But behind the applause and praise, John struggled with heavy drinking. At first, it seemed harmless. He enjoyed parties, laughter, and long nights with friends. Alcohol was common in Hollywood social life, and no one thought much of it. However, as the years passed, his drinking became more serious. He started forgetting lines on set. Directors became frustrated. Co-stars worried about his health. His once clear voice began to weaken, and his strong memory slowly faded. The studios that once praised him now saw him as a problem. Instead of helping him, they quietly reduced his roles. Gossip magazines began to whisper about his behavior. The same industry that had lifted him up was now stepping back. In his later years, John often appeared tired and older than his age. His performances were not as sharp as before, and some people even laughed at him, forgetting the greatness he once showed. This fall from glory was painful to watch. It showed how quickly Hollywood could turn away from someone who no longer fit the perfect image. When John Barrymore died in 1942, many people remembered the legend he had been, but they also remembered the sad ending. His story became a warning about how alcohol, when mixed with fame and pressure, can slowly destroy even the brightest star. Another heartbreaking story from Hollywood's golden age is that of Judy Garland. From the time she was a little girl, Judy was placed under the bright lights of fame. She became a household name after her unforgettable role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, produced by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Audiences adored her powerful voice, emotional performances, and warm personality. On screen, she seemed full of life and hope. But behind the scenes, her reality was very different. As a young teenager, Judy was pushed to work long hours. Studio executives controlled her diet, her sleep, and even her weight. To keep her energy high during exhausting filming schedules, she was reportedly given pills. To help her sleep at night, she was given other pills. This unhealthy cycle began when she was still very young, and it created deep physical and emotional problems later in her life. As she grew older, the pressure to remain perfect never disappeared. When her film career slowed down, she turned more and more to alcohol as a way to escape stress and sadness. Judy's drinking did not happen overnight. It grew slowly as she faced failed marriages, financial problems, and constant public attention. She often performed in concerts to support herself, even when she was physically exhausted. There were nights when she delivered brilliant performances that reminded everyone of her great talent. But there were also nights when she appeared weak, late, or unable to finish a show. Critics could be harsh, and the public sometimes forgot how much pain she carried inside. Her struggle was not simply about fame. It was about a child star who never truly had the chance to grow up in a normal, healthy way. By the late 1960s, her body and mind were deeply tired. When Judy Garland passed away in 1969, the world mourned the loss of a legend. Yet her life also became a powerful example of how early fame, combined with pressure and addiction, can slowly break even the most gifted performer. Her voice remains timeless, but her story reminds us that behind the magic of Hollywood, there were real human beings fighting battles that audiences rarely saw. Another powerful example of a golden age star whose life was deeply affected by alcohol is William Holden. Holden was one of the most respected leading men of his time. With his calm voice, strong screen presence, and natural acting style, he became a major star in the 1950s. His performances in films like Sunset Boulevard and Stalag 17 earned him great praise from critics and audiences alike. In fact, he even won an Academy Award for Best Actor, proving that he was not just handsome, but also deeply talented. On the surface, William Holden seemed to have everything: fame, money, success, and admiration. But like many actors of that era, he lived under constant pressure. Hollywood expected him to stay at the top, deliver strong performances, and maintain a perfect public image. Behind the scenes, Holden struggled with heavy drinking that slowly became a serious problem. Unlike some stars whose troubles were hidden by studios, Holden's drinking became more visible as time passed. He often drank heavily during filming breaks and social gatherings. At first, people around him treated it as normal Hollywood behavior. But over the years, alcohol began to affect his health and professional reputation. Some directors found it difficult to work with him. His personal relationships also suffered. While he continued to make films and remained popular for many years, those close to him knew that his addiction was growing worse. By the late 1970s, his health had clearly declined. In 1981, William Holden died after an accidental fall in his home, a tragic event that was linked to heavy intoxication. His death shocked many fans who still remembered him as the strong and confident leading man from his classic films. His story is not just about a talented actor who drank too much. It is about how addiction can slowly weaken even someone who appears powerful and in control. William Holden's legacy in cinema remains strong, but his life also stands as a sad reminder that fame does not protect anyone from personal battles, especially when those battles are fought alone. One of the most tragic and shocking stories from Hollywood's golden age is that of Montgomery Clift. Unlike some stars who slowly faded from fame, Clift's struggle was closely connected to a painful turning point in his life. In the early 1950s, he was considered one of the most talented actors of his generation. He starred in powerful films like A Place in the Sun alongside Elizabeth Taylor, and audiences admired his emotional depth and sensitive performances. He was different from the typical Hollywood leading man. He brought a quiet intensity to his roles, and many critics believed he was helping to change the style of acting in American cinema. His career seemed unstoppable. But in 1956, everything changed after a terrible car accident that left him with serious facial injuries. The physical pain was severe, but the emotional pain was even deeper. For an actor whose face was central to his career, the accident felt devastating. After the crash, Clift underwent surgery and returned to work, but those close to him noticed a major change. He began drinking heavily and also relied on prescription medication to deal with pain and stress. The combination created a dangerous cycle. Some film sets became difficult as he struggled with memory and focus. Studios worried about delays and insurance risks. Although he continued to deliver strong performances in films like Judgment at Nuremberg, it was clear that he was suffering. The press often described his later years as the longest suicide in Hollywood, a harsh phrase that showed how visible his decline had become. By the mid-1960s, Montgomery Clift's health had seriously weakened. In 1966, he died at the age of 45. While his official cause of death was heart-related, many believe that years of substance abuse played a major role in his early passing. His story stands as one of the saddest examples of how trauma, pressure, and addiction can combine to destroy a brilliant career. Even today, film lovers remember his talent and sensitivity, but they also remember how quickly life can change and how fragile even the brightest stars can be when they carry pain that no one truly sees. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking examples of a golden age star destroyed by alcohol is Barbara Payton. Unlike some of the bigger legends who enjoyed long careers before their decline, Barbara's fall happened quickly and very publicly. In the late 1940s, she was seen as a rising star with striking beauty and strong screen presence. She appeared in films alongside well-known actors and seemed to have a promising future ahead of her. Studios believed she could become a major leading lady. At a time when Hollywood was searching for new faces to attract audiences, Barbara had the look and confidence that producers wanted. But her personal life soon began to overshadow her career. Barbara became involved in a very public and messy love triangle between Frank Tone and Tom Neal. The scandal made headlines and damaged her reputation in an industry that valued image above all else. As job offers became fewer, she turned more heavily to alcohol. Drinking became a daily habit, not just something for parties or celebrations. Over time, alcohol affected her behavior, her appearance, and her reliability on set. Directors were hesitant to hire her, and studios slowly closed their doors. Without steady work, her financial problems grew worse. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, Barbara's life had dramatically changed. The glamorous actress who once walked red carpets was now struggling to survive. Reports from that time described her living in poor conditions and battling serious addiction. Her decline shocked many in Hollywood because it happened so fast. In 1967, Barbara Payton died at the young age of 39, with liver and heart failure linked to years of alcohol abuse. Her story is especially tragic because it shows how quickly fame can disappear. She did not have decades of success before her fall. She barely had time to establish herself. For her, the pressure, scandal, and addiction combined into a storm she could not escape. Her life stands as a painful reminder that in Hollywood's golden age, beauty and talent were not enough to protect someone from the destructive power of addiction and public judgment. Finally, at number 1 on our list is the story of Judy Garland, the star who tragically never had a chance. Judy Garland's life exemplifies the dark side of Hollywood's golden age, where studios often treated young performers like commodities rather than children. Garland, born Frances Ethelgum, was signed by MGM at a very young age. From the moment she joined the studio, she was placed under a strict regimen designed to maximize her productivity and maintain her appearance on screen. Unfortunately, this regimen included the routine administration of stimulants to keep her awake and energetic during long shooting days and sedatives to help her sleep at night. These practices, intended to keep her working at top capacity, created a chemical dependency long before she could make her own decisions about substances. Alcohol eventually became a way for Garland to self-medicate and gain some semblance of control over the relentless cycle imposed by the studio as Garland entered her teenage years and starred in iconic films such as The Wizard of Oz. Her addiction worsened. The stimulants and sedatives given to her by MGM had already rewired her brain chemistry, leaving her physically and emotionally dependent. Her weight fluctuated dramatically, and her behavior became erratic on set. Studio executives, who had essentially created her addiction, eventually deemed her unreliable and terminated her contract when her struggles began to interfere with production. Garland's career continued in bursts of brilliance, including her legendary 1961 Carnegie Hall concert, but she never fully escaped the cycle of dependency that began under studio supervision. Over the years, the effects of decades of chemical management and self-medication took their toll on her health. Judy Garland died in 1969 at the age of 47 from an accidental overdose, with coroner reports confirming long-term substance abuse spanning decades. Her story is profoundly tragic because it highlights how the Golden Age system actively contributed to the downfall of its brightest stars, exploiting them for profit while disregarding their well-being. Judy Garland's life and death remain emblematic of Hollywood's systematic abuse, and her legacy is forever intertwined with both her extraordinary talent and the heartbreaking realities of an industry that prioritized production over humanity. Now that we've covered the individual stories of these 15 stars, it's important to step back and consider the broader picture. What these tragedies reveal about Hollywood's golden age as an industry. Behind the glitz, glamour, and red carpet appearances was a system that often valued profit over people, success over safety, and appearances over health. The common thread linking these stories isn't simply personal weakness or poor choices. It's a culture that enabled addiction, rewarded self-destruction as entertainment, and in some cases, actively created dependency. Stars like Judy Garland were chemically managed by studios,